Adam Hale stood before the towering hangar doors, his fingers trembling with an odd mixture of anticipation and disbelief. He had just been told that he, a relatively unknown pilot on Earth, had been selected to pilot the Phoenix, a state-of-the-art starfighter that the galaxy's most powerful allies had crafted in secret. His mind raced with questions he had no answers to. Why him? How could someone like him, whose name barely made the radar on Earth, be chosen for something so monumental? Was he really the best pilot they could find, or was this some kind of cruel joke? His thoughts were interrupted by the low hum of engines, and the hangar doors slowly parted, revealing the sleek form of the Phoenix. It was unlike any spacecraft Adam had ever seen, its design both futuristic and impossibly complex. A dark metallic hull with sharp, angular wings that seemed to pulse with energy. Its cockpit, nestled deep within the craft's body, glowed with an inviting blue light. "You look like you've never seen a ship before," a voice said from behind him, drawing Adam's attention. It was Captain Zira, the alien commander of the faction that had recruited him. She was tall and graceful, her silvery skin shimmering faintly under the hangar lights, her eyes an unsettling shade of violet. Her people were known for their advanced technology and fierce independence. They had suffered under the Empire's iron grip for centuries. Adam straightened his back, trying to shake off his doubts. "It's not the ship that's got me shaken," he said, his voice more forceful than he felt. "It's the fact that you're asking a human, from a barely developed planet, to fight in a war you've been fighting for centuries." Zira gave a knowing smile. "Humanity has something that the Empire never understood, the ability to adapt, the ability to survive. You'll see that for yourself soon enough. The Phoenix was designed specifically for you. We've analyzed your combat simulations, and you're a natural in the cockpit. But more importantly, you think differently. We need that." Her words hit him harder than expected. Was it really that simple? Was his ability to think outside the box the key to everything? His mind flitted back to his training days, countless hours spent pushing his limits in the flight simulators, the intense dogfights, the adrenaline-fueled precision that had often set him apart from his peers. But this was real, and the stakes were incomprehensibly higher than anything he had faced in Earth's atmosphere. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," Adam admitted, his gaze lingering on the Phoenix. "You've got more experienced pilots on your side." Zira's expression softened, and for the first time, Adam saw a flicker of something resembling empathy in her violet eyes. Experience is a double-edged sword. The older pilots have seen too much of the war. They've lost too much. You still have that spark, that drive to make things right. That's something the Empire can't predict. You don't have the baggage we do, and that makes you dangerous. Adam's chest tightened. Could he really be the one to turn the tide of this war? The weight of the responsibility felt crushing. He had never wanted to be a hero. But with Earth's future on the line, and with the lives of countless innocent beings depending on him, there was no turning back. Zira motioned to the Phoenix with a gesture that was almost reverent. "Get in. The sooner you start flying, the sooner you'll understand why we chose you." For a moment, Adam hesitated, but the fire in his gut, the same fire that had driven him through every challenge on Earth, flared up again. With a slow nod, he stepped forward, climbing into the cockpit of the Phoenix. As the hatch sealed above him, he took a deep breath, his hands gripping the controls. The ship hummed to life, responding to his touch as if it were an extension of his own body. In the vastness of space, there would be no room for second-guessing. The war had already begun, and Adam Hale had just become part of something far bigger than himself. Adam's heart raced as the Phoenix shot through the void of space. The sleek starfighter felt alive beneath him, its controls reacting to his every command with an almost intuitive precision. He barely had time to admire the craft before the comm system buzzed in his ear. "Listen up, Hale," Zira's voice crackled through the headset, calm and authoritative. "This isn't a training simulation. We're flying into an active combat zone. There's no room for hesitation. You follow my lead, and you'll make it out alive. Understood?" Adam's fingers tightened around the control stick, a mix of nerves and excitement surging through him. "Understood, Captain," he replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. Ahead, the shimmering form of a hostile battleship emerged from the dark expanse. The enemy's fleet, vast and merciless, hovered like an impenetrable wall in the void. The Alliance had made this a priority mission. A key stronghold had to be captured before the Empire could reinforce its defenses. Adam and the rest of the squadron were the vanguard of this critical strike. Zira's voice came again, sharper this time. "On my mark, break formation and engage. Stay tight and stay focused." Adam's fingers danced over the control panels as the Phoenix began to hum with energy. He could feel the ship's power coursing through the systems, ready for anything. His mind raced through every maneuver, every dogfighting tactic he had learned in simulation. But this was real. These were no artificial enemies. These were Empire soldiers, ruthless and relentless. "Mark," Zira barked. Without hesitation, Adam yanked the throttle back, throwing the Phoenix into a sharp turn. His vision blurred as the Starfighter twisted through space, narrowly avoiding a volley of blaster fire that would have torn any lesser ship apart. The enemy's fire streaked past in flashes of blue and red, but Adam was already behind them, using his ship's agility to gain an advantage. The enemy fighters, sleek black ships with red insignias, swarmed around him, opening fire in a deadly barrage. Adam's instincts kicked in. He flipped the switch to activate the afterburners, propelling the Phoenix forward with explosive speed. A red laser narrowly missed him as he dove into a high-speed roll, spinning through the enemy's attack with a precision he had never felt before. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear, focusing only on survival and victory. Suddenly, a massive explosion rattled the ship, throwing him off course for a split second. A blast had hit one of the squadron's ships, sending it spiraling out of control into the black void. The debris was scattered across the battlefield like a storm of broken metal. Adam's throat tightened as he saw the flash of the ship's destruction, but there was no time to mourn. "Keep it together, Hale." Zira's voice cut through his moment of hesitation. "We can't afford to lose focus." He snapped back to reality, his hands steady on the controls. His mind flicked through the calculations, the thousands of tiny variables that made up a successful dogfight. Another enemy fighter came at him, laser cannon slashing. Adam banked left, pulling into a sharp climb that sent the enemy ship overshooting its attack. As he flipped the Phoenix around, the targeting system locked onto the enemy ship, and he fired. The blast hit its mark, the fighter disintegrating into a burst of fire and debris. "Nice shot, Hale." Zira's voice was approving now, but there was no time for celebration. "The others are making their move. Get to the flagship." Adam's eyes narrowed as he spotted the massive Imperial battleship at the heart of the enemy formation, surrounded by hundreds of smaller fighters. His pulse quickened. This was the moment that would define everything. The battle had only just begun, but already the odds felt insurmountable. Yet something deep inside him ignited, a fierce determination to prove that Earth wasn't a backwater planet, and that he wasn't just another pilot. "Let's show them what humanity's made of," he muttered under his breath, firing the Phoenix's primary cannons and racing toward the heart of the storm. With a final burst of speed, Adam dove into the fray. His squadron followed his lead, and together, they tore through the enemy lines, leaving devastation in their wake. The sky around them was alive with explosions, flashes of blaster fire, and the screams of metal on metal as the battle raged on. But Adam's focus never wavered. This was his fight now, and he would fight until the very end. The aftermath of the battle left Adam feeling more alive than he ever had before. The Phoenix had proven itself to be everything Zira promised: fast, agile, and deadly. But even as the euphoria of victory lingered, a dark cloud hung over Adam. As the squadron regrouped and moved into position for a counterstrike, an unsettling silence filled the comms. Zira's voice broke through the stillness, but it was laced with tension. "Something's wrong. We've just received a transmission from our command station. We've been compromised." Adam's stomach dropped. His mind raced back to the betrayal he had feared from the moment he was thrust into this war, a sense that he was nothing more than a pawn in someone else's game. "What are you saying, Captain?" "There's a leak. The high-ranking officer in the Alliance has turned on us. The enemy knows our next move. They've already set up an ambush at the command station." The words hit Adam like a physical blow. His instincts told him to trust Zira, but the thought of an ally betraying them so completely gnawed at him. The Alliance had suffered countless losses already. If they lost their command center now, the Empire would have the upper hand. The entire Galactic War could change course in a heartbeat. "We don't have much time. We have to act fast," Zira continued, her voice sharp and calculated. "I need you to lead a small strike team. We're going to find the traitor before they can do any more damage." Adam swallowed the knot in his throat, trying to mask the doubt creeping into his mind. And how do we find a traitor in a galaxy this big? "There's always a trail," Zira said, "and you, Hale, have the instincts to follow it." As the Phoenix and the rest of the squadron moved to a hidden location for a temporary regrouping, Adam sat alone in his cockpit, eyes fixed on the stars outside. His mind raced through the events of the battle. Was there something he had missed? A slip-up in their tactics, a signal that someone had been working against them from within. The thought gnawed at him, making his blood run cold. "I need to know who did this," Adam muttered to himself, slamming his fist against the dashboard. "And why?" Zira's voice came through the comms again, this time with a note of urgency. "Hale, the fleet is moving. We've got a rendezvous point at the outer rim, but it's risky. The Empire has closed in. We have to get there before they do. You're leading this mission, whether you like it or not." Adam took a deep breath and snapped into action. His hands worked the controls of the Phoenix without thinking. The mission was clear: get to the rendezvous point, identify the traitor, and stop the Empire from exploiting the betrayal. Failure was not an option. As Adam flew through the darkness of space, his mind turned over the names of possible suspects. There were few people in the Alliance he knew well enough to trust, and even fewer who knew his real capabilities. Was it one of the senior officers from the command station? Someone who had been here from the start? Or was it someone closer to him, someone who had been hiding in plain sight? Zira's voice broke through his thoughts. "There's something else you need to know, Hale. The traitor isn't just after the command station. They're after something more valuable. Something that could shift the balance of power." Adam's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "I can't tell you everything now, but we need to find this traitor before they get their hands on it. Trust no one." The weight of Zira's words sank into Adam's chest like a lead weight. They were deeper in this conspiracy than he realized. It wasn't just about the fight anymore. It was about something far more dangerous, a secret that could destroy everything they had fought for. As they neared the rendezvous point, Adam's nerves were on edge. His squadron was ready for anything, but no amount of preparation could protect them from the invisible danger lurking in their midst. Someone on their side was playing a dangerous game, and Adam would have to outwit them if he wanted to keep the galaxy from falling into the Empire's hands. When they arrived at the rendezvous, the vast emptiness of space stretched before them, unyielding and silent. But somewhere, hidden within that silence, was a traitor, one who had to be stopped at all costs. The rendezvous point was nothing but a barren patch of space, marked only by a faint signal emanating from a nearby asteroid field. Adam's pulse raced as he brought the Phoenix in, flanked by the remaining squadron members. The eerie stillness of the void felt suffocating. He could almost feel the eyes of the traitor on him, watching his every move. Zira's voice crackled over the comms, laced with urgency. "We're not alone. The Empire has dispatched a fleet to intercept us. We've got less than 15 minutes before they reach this sector." Adam's grip tightened on the controls, his mind racing. The Alliance had to be cautious. If they made a wrong move, they could be walking straight into an ambush. But if they hesitated for even a second, they would be out of time. "Understood," Adam said, his voice steady despite the rising pressure. "I'll set up a perimeter. Keep your eyes peeled." The asteroid field ahead shimmered in the distance, a perfect hiding spot for both friend and foe. Adam's thoughts flickered back to Zira's words. The traitor is after something valuable. What could be so important that they would risk everything for it? It was clear now that this wasn't just about military advantage. The betrayal had deeper roots. "Stay sharp," Zira warned again. "We're expecting trouble from all directions. Trust no one." Adam scanned the sector carefully, his eyes flicking between the radar readouts and the field of asteroids. He couldn't afford to be distracted. The Phoenix was a precision weapon, and every turn, every move had to be calculated. He checked his systems one more time: shields, weapons, and engines. Everything was green, but something felt off. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The seconds ticked by, slow and agonizing. Adam's breath was steady, his mind sharp, but his thoughts kept circling back to one thing: who could the traitor be? He trusted Zira, trusted her more than anyone in this galaxy, but even she wasn't immune to suspicion. Adam knew she was hiding something from him, something that might change everything, but he had to focus on the mission. For now. Suddenly, a red warning light flashed on his display, followed by a series of blaring alarms. Enemy ships emerged from the depths of the asteroid field like phantoms. They were on top of them, faster than Adam had anticipated. "Brace for impact." Zira's voice was sharp as ever. Before Adam could react, enemy fighters streaked past, their weapons firing. The Phoenix rocked under the assault, but Adam quickly rolled the ship, sending it careening into a sharp dive. His heart pounded as he executed a tight evasive maneuver, the enemy fire missing by mere inches. The Phoenix responded beautifully, its agility unmatched by the enemy ships. "Formation Delta," Zira commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to take them down now. If we don't, the traitor gets what they want." Adam's focus sharpened. The enemy fighters were circling back, their weapons charged. He could see the glint of the enemy flagship in the distance, larger, more menacing, and just waiting for the opportunity to strike. This wasn't just a distraction. It was a full-scale assault. "We've got this," Adam muttered to himself. His fingers moved swiftly over the controls, locking onto the closest fighter in his sights. A single blast from the Phoenix's laser cannons vaporized it, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. But Adam knew this wasn't over. They were outnumbered, and the longer they stayed in this sector, the more they risked losing everything. Zira's voice again, calmer now, but with a dangerous edge. "The traitor is in the flagship. That's where they'll make their move. Get there first, Hale. We can't let them reach the core." A cold wave of realization hit Adam. This wasn't just a betrayal of the Alliance. It was an attempt to cripple their entire war effort. The traitor's goal wasn't just sabotage. They were going to destroy the Alliance from within. "On my way," Adam replied, his hands already shifting to engage the afterburners. The Phoenix shot forward with blinding speed, the rest of the squadron following closely behind. As they neared the flagship, the enemy fighters began to regroup, forming a defensive perimeter. The battle was far from over, but Adam was done waiting. He had been thrust into the heart of this conflict, and now it was up to him to finish it. With his sights set on the enemy flagship, he gritted his teeth. The traitor would not win today, and no matter what, Adam Hale was going to make sure of it. The enemy flagship loomed ahead, its dark, imposing silhouette cutting through the void of space. Adam's eyes were fixed on it, his entire focus narrowing to the sleek, black behemoth that had become the center of everything, the traitor's hiding place, the key to the Empire's victory, and now, the target of humanity's last hope. On my mark, break formation, Zira's voice came through the comms. We're going in fast and hard. Stay with me, Hale. Don't fall behind. Adam's grip tightened on the controls as the Phoenix surged forward, its engines screaming through the expanse. The squadron moved in a coordinated sweep, arcing around the flagship, creating a tight perimeter as they prepared to strike. The enemy fighters came to life, moving to intercept, but Adam wasn't going to let them slow him down. His hands danced over the controls, executing a flawless barrel roll that sent the Phoenix diving and weaving through the incoming fire. Focus, Hale. Zira's voice snapped him back to reality. We're running out of time. The massive flagship continued to loom ahead, its weapon systems tracking the squadron as they closed in. Adam knew that once they reached it, things would get much worse. The flagship wasn't just armed, it was fortified with shields that could absorb most of their firepower. He had to get close enough to strike the heart of the ship, where the traitor would be hiding. But even as they neared, Adam's mind kept racing. The thought of the traitor was an unrelenting weight in his chest. Zira's warning echoed in his mind, trust no one. Was it possible that she too had been compromised? Could she have been part of the betrayal all along? No, Adam couldn't afford to doubt her now. There was something bigger at stake, something more important than his fears. Engage the breach point, Zira ordered, snapping Adam out of his thoughts. Get us through the shields. Adam's fingers flew over the controls as the Phoenix executed a hard left, lining up with the breach point, a vulnerable area in the flagship's shields, a perfect shot. The Phoenix's weapons roared to life, unleashing a torrent of concentrated energy on the breach. The shields shimmered and flickered, but they held firm. The Phoenix moved in closer, another volley of fire ripping across the shield, each blast weakening it. Then, with a violent shudder, the shields gave way. Adam's heart skipped a beat. This was it. Go, now. Zira's command was filled with urgency. The Phoenix surged forward, diving into the gap in the flagship's defenses. The enemy fighters swarmed, but Adam was too focused to be distracted. He cut through their formations, dodging blasts and striking back with lethal precision. His targeting system locked onto the massive energy conduits running along the flagship's hull. A quick burst of fire, and the first conduit exploded, sending ripples of chaos through the ship's defenses. But just as Adam thought they were making headway, a chilling realization struck him. The flagship's interior was darkened by a new signal. A hidden compartment was broadcasting a high-priority transmission, one encrypted at the highest level. The traitor wasn't just hiding on the ship. They were communicating with the Empire, sending them vital information, or worse, a countdown. This isn't just a military strike, Adam muttered, his breath catching in his throat. They're selling us out. Get to the core, Hale. Zira's voice crackled in his ear, urgency mounting. We need to stop that transmission before it's too late. Adam's eyes flicked to the navigation display. There, at the heart of the ship, was the core of the transmission. It was heavily guarded, but Adam wasn't going to stop. He could hear Zira's squadron moving into position, distracting the enemy long enough for him to make his move. He was almost there. The Phoenix zipped through the tight corridors of the flagship, its sensors flaring as it neared the core. The transmission signal was stronger now, more powerful. The traitor was close. Suddenly, the comm system crackled to life again, but this time, it wasn't Zira's voice that filled his earpiece. It was a familiar voice, one he hadn't expected to hear. You've done well, Adam, the voice said, smooth and cold. But it's too late. Adam froze. The traitor had known all along. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. He turned to the comms, searching for a sign of who it was. Zira, Adam whispered, the cold dread creeping up his spine. The betrayal he had feared had come true, and Zira's voice was nowhere to be heard. It was too late. The Empire had won. Adam's breath came in short gasps, his heart hammering in his chest as the realization hit him like a blow. The traitor had been Zira all along. The steady, commanding voice that had guided him through battle, that had pushed him to be more than he ever thought possible, had betrayed him and the entire alliance. Zira, the name escaped his lips in a breathless whisper, a mix of disbelief and fury. But the voice on the other end of the comms wasn't Zira's. It was colder, more calculating, dripping with venomous satisfaction. No, Adam, you've been deceived. Zira was always a means to an end, and now you're in the perfect position to help us finish this. The voice was familiar, but Adam couldn't place it. His mind raced as he turned the Phoenix around, seeking any sign of Zira's squadron or a way to escape the trap he had just flown into. Who are you? Adam demanded, his voice tinged with rage. What do you want? We want the galaxy to burn, Adam. The voice chuckled, dark and hollow. And you're the key. Adam's hands trembled as he fought to steady the Phoenix. His thoughts swirled, trying to make sense of what was happening. He had been a pawn in Zira's game, and now he was thrust into the heart of the Empire's conspiracy. But something gnawed at him. The traitor's words felt wrong. He was the key? What did that even mean? Suddenly, the Phoenix rocked violently, a blast tearing through its shields and rattling Adam's core. The ship's systems began to flicker, alarms blaring as damage reports flooded in. Damn it! Adam cursed under his breath. His mind raced through options, calculating escape routes, but the flagship's defenses were closing in. The walls were tightening around him. He glanced back at the battlefield, only to see Zira's squadron, now part of the enemy force, turning on the remaining Alliance fighters. The betrayal was complete. Zira had switched sides, and Adam was the only one left who could stand against the Empire. You should have known better, Adam, the voice mocked. Zira wasn't the real threat. You were always meant to lead us to the final piece. Adam's mind flashed back to the cryptic message Zira had sent him earlier, trust no one. He hadn't trusted her, not fully, and now that distrust was the only thing keeping him sane. What final piece? Adam growled, fighting to regain control of the Phoenix as it plummeted toward the flagship's hull. The damage was mounting. His systems were starting to fail. The key to ultimate power, Adam. The relic hidden deep within your DNA. The voice's words hit Adam like a physical blow, the shock of their meaning reverberating through his body. You've been chosen, but you never knew it. You were created to be more than just a soldier. You were created to be our weapon. The words didn't make sense. Adam's head swam as he struggled to process the betrayal and the revelation that followed. A relic hidden in his DNA? He had always thought of himself as just a fighter, someone who had stumbled into this war by accident, someone who had no greater purpose than to survive. But the Empire saw him as something more, something dangerous. No, Adam's voice was firm, filled with defiance. I'm not your weapon. You don't have a choice. The voice responded, its tone no longer mocking, but cold and final. You were born for this, Adam. You can't outrun your fate. The Phoenix shuddered again as another barrage of fire slammed into its side, knocking out the primary stabilizers. The ship veered off course, sending Adam into a series of desperate evasive maneuvers. His hands flew over the controls, trying to keep the ship intact, but it was becoming harder to maintain control. The Phoenix was falling apart, piece by piece. You're too late, Adam, the voice sneered. The Empire is already preparing the final strike. No one can stop us now. Adam's vision blurred as his thoughts raced, desperation settling in. Zira's betrayal, the mysterious enemy force, the relic, everything was converging on him, and he didn't have answers. But he did know one thing. He couldn't let the Empire win. Not like this. He looked at the dying Phoenix, its controls flickering and sparking, but he wasn't ready to give up. He refused to let the galaxy fall into the hands of the Empire. If his DNA was the key, then maybe he could turn that power against them. He wasn't their weapon. He was going to make sure they regretted ever choosing him. With a final, determined breath, Adam set his course for the heart of the flagship. There had to be a way out, a way to strike back. And if it meant facing the Empire alone, he would. No matter the cost. The war wasn't over. Not yet. The Phoenix lurched again, groaning under the strain of the battle. The ship's hull was pockmarked with scorched metal and systems were failing rapidly. Adam's hands, slick with sweat, gripped the controls as the flagship loomed ever closer. Every warning light on his console screamed in protest, but he ignored it. His focus had narrowed to a single point, the core of the enemy vessel, where the traitor's plans would come to fruition. He could still feel the words of the traitor burning in his mind. "You were born for this, Adam. You were created to be our weapon." The realization hung over him like a dark cloud. But Adam refused to accept that fate. He wasn't anyone's weapon, not Zira's, not the Empire's. Ahead, the heart of the flagship pulsed with ominous energy. He had to get there. There was no choice left. The Phoenix was barely holding together, but its power core was still functional, and that might be enough to push through. Just a few more moments. "Hale, what's your status?" Zira's voice, somehow calm amidst the chaos, cut through the static. She was no longer the ally he had once trusted, but he couldn't afford to ignore her now. "I'm going in," Adam snapped, his voice low and filled with resolve. "You're not getting away with this, Zira." For a moment, there was silence on the other end, and then a soft, almost regretful sigh. "You don't understand. You never did. This isn't just about us, Adam. It's about the future, our future." Adam's teeth gritted in fury. He had no time for her words. The Phoenix shuddered again, alarms blaring louder than ever as the flagship's shields began to regenerate, forming an impenetrable wall between him and the core. "Damn it," Adam cursed under his breath. "I need an opening." But Zira's voice came back, sharp and cold. "You'll never get through the shields. Not without my help." His fingers hovered over the console, torn between trusting her and rejecting everything she had just done. The words that had once been a beacon of hope, her instructions, her promises, now felt like lies. But even so, the traitor's plan was still in motion, and Adam couldn't afford to second-guess his next move. "I don't need your help," he muttered, pushing the Phoenix forward with all its remaining thrust. But just as he prepared to barrel through the shields with sheer force, a signal flared up on his radar. An ally, a faint signal, one of his squadron still alive. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't alone. "Zira, wait." Adam's voice was sharp, laced with suspicion. "What was that signal?" For a moment, Zira hesitated. "It's too late, Adam. You're in no position to make demands." Adam's instincts screamed at him. Something wasn't right. He slammed his hand onto the console, activating a manual override to access the signal. The data flooded his screens, revealing a chilling truth. The signal wasn't an ally at all. It was a trap. The enemy had planted a decoy, a faint signal designed to lead him straight into the flagship's core defenses. He had been walking into a trap the entire time, feeding directly into their hands. The flagship shields, now fully recharged, began to pulse with even greater power, preparing to crush the Phoenix. "No," Adam roared, slamming the throttle to full power, pushing the Phoenix to its limit. There had to be a way out, some way to turn this around. His eyes scanned the core's layout. There, near the central command tower, was a weakness in the shielding, a point of vulnerability. He set the course. If this was going to be his final stand, he would make sure it counted. The Phoenix rocketed forward, blindingly fast, heading straight for the core. Zira's voice came through again, louder this time, a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Stop, Adam. You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Adam said through gritted teeth. His hands were steady on the controls. There was no room for hesitation anymore. He had been manipulated, but the war wasn't over. His mission remained the same: stop the Empire, no matter the cost. The flagship's central core began to charge its massive energy weapon, aiming directly at Adam's ship. A massive pulse of energy began to form, but Adam had no intention of running. The Phoenix shot forward with everything it had left. At the last moment, Adam activated the Phoenix's final offensive, the overload sequence. With a violent shudder, the ship's systems went into overdrive, and the last remaining energy reserves were diverted into the weapon systems. "Goodbye, Zira," Adam whispered, the words carrying a weight he could never have prepared for. The Phoenix slammed into the heart of the flagship, the explosion ripping through the core with a force that shook the entire fleet. And in that final moment, Adam Hale knew he had done what was necessary. He had taken down the Empire's final weapon, even if it meant paying the ultimate price. The galaxy would never forget his name, and neither would Zira. The Phoenix's final explosion shattered the flagship's core, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Adam felt the ship's systems give out, the ship's engines sputtering one last time as everything around him went dark. For a brief moment, there was nothing, no sound, no light, just a void. The very fabric of space seemed to bend as the shockwave from the detonation reached out, consuming everything in its path. But then, amidst the silence, Adam's consciousness stirred. He wasn't dead. Not yet. His eyes fluttered open, his vision blurred, and his breath ragged. The wreckage of the Phoenix spun around him, debris drifting through the vacuum. For a fleeting moment, he wondered if it had all been a dream, a nightmare, but the pain in his chest told him otherwise. The comms crackled, bringing a faint, distorted voice through the static. "Hale." The voice was weak, but unmistakable. "Zira." "Zira?" Adam rasped, his voice hoarse, a mixture of disbelief and confusion. "What's happening?" "It's over," she whispered, her tone filled with a hollow resignation. "The flagship is gone. The Empire's plans have been crushed." Adam's eyes scanned the dark expanse of space, searching for any sign of the battle. The fleet, his fleet, had vanished in the wake of the explosion. But the silence was deafening. The war wasn't over yet. The Empire's power had been struck a critical blow, but it would take more than one man's sacrifice to end it for good. "I couldn't stop it, Adam." Zira's voice was filled with regret, and for the first time since their betrayal, Adam heard the truth in her words. "We were never meant to win this war, not with the Empire's hold over everything. But you—" She cut herself off, the static becoming heavier. Adam's mind was spinning, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Zira's betrayal, the weapon hidden in his DNA, and the final confrontation that had ended with the destruction of the flagship. He didn't know what to believe anymore. "Zira," Adam repeated, his voice stronger now, more determined. "Tell me everything." Zira's voice faltered. "I'm sorry, Adam. There was no choice. The Empire was too strong. It controlled everything, even the truth." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, Adam thought he heard the faintest hint of tears. "But you were the key. You were the only one who could change the course of history. I never wanted this, not really, but I didn't have a choice." Adam's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. The Empire had manipulated everything. His role, his actions, it had all been orchestrated. But in the end, he had made the choice. His final act, the explosion that destroyed the flagship, had been his. And in that choice, he had taken control of his destiny. "Then what now?" Adam asked, his voice cold, determined. "What happens to the galaxy?" Zira was silent for a long moment before she finally responded, her voice soft yet resolute. Now it's up to you, Adam, to rebuild, to finish what we started. You've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. The Empire won't stop fighting, but they'll never recover from this. The path is yours." Adam looked out at the remnants of the flagship, the battlefield that had once been filled with chaos, now eerily still. He had done it. He had struck the blow that shattered the Empire's hold, but the galaxy wasn't free yet, not entirely. He closed his eyes, taking a long breath. The war wasn't over, but he would be ready. "I'll rebuild," he whispered to himself, a quiet promise that carried the weight of 1,000 fallen soldiers. "I'll make sure humanity has a future of our own making." In the distance, he could see the faint outline of a fleet, the remnants of the rebellion, rising from the ashes. There was still hope. The fight wasn't over. And Adam Hale, Earth's last starfighter, would lead them. Not as a weapon, not as a pawn, but as the hero the galaxy had needed all along. The stars were still waiting.